Hi, everybody. This next section that we're going to talk about is going to be circles and different things dealing with circles. The reason we're doing this is because it is part of our core, and a lot of times there are questions on the ACT about circles and different things with dealing with that. So we're going to go through the basics of it. We're not going to go super in depth in all of it, but we will go through the basics of circles so that hopefully when you see these type of questions on an ACT, you will be familiar. Question one, we're going to talk about, and a lot of this particular section is vocabulary and trying to figure out what all of these items are. So we have to start with the basics in order to move on. So this first question asks us to identify secant line. Now the key here is that it says line, not line segment. So if you look along here, this one cannot be a secant line and this one cannot be because the lines above it stop. It has to have an arrow above it to be a secant line because lines continue on and on. Line segments stop. So BC and CD cannot be the secant line because they have a line segment symbol above the coordinates. So just that can eliminate two right there. So if I look at this, a secant line touches your curve or your circle in two places. It can be more than two, but it has to be a minimum of two. So CD right here, and it said CD here, but CD had a line segment above it. So if it had a line above CD, CD would be a secant line. But because it has a line segment, that's why we eliminated it. Because CD would be just a chord, because a chord is a segment that stops at the edge of each of the on the circle. Line continues. So CF, you can see C to F. There's arrows going on. There's arrows above the coordinates. So that is a secant line in this drawing. FE, if you look here, FE, it touches it at one point right here. So because it only touches at one point, it is called a tangent. So CF is a secant. FE is a tangent line. Okay, and if it stops right here like this is a chord. Now it's also a diameter because it goes through the center point, but chords and diameters are the same thing, just chords. And we'll go on to this, but there's more chords than there are diameters because diameters have to go through the center line. A chord is like CD. CD is also a chord because it touches each edge of the circle but does not go through the center. It's still a chord. But it is not a secant line because it doesn't continue. So those are just the basics. I won't go into that every single problem, but I just wanted to discuss each one of those and what the kind of the definition behind them were. So in this diagram below, we're supposed to identify the secant line. So we look through and we go, okay, KL. KL right here, it touches it in one point, so it's a tangent. That means it's not a secant. KQ stops. So if I say KQ, that is a chord. It is not a secant line because it doesn't continue with arrows going on. If it had arrows, it would be a secant line. So NP, we go from N to P. It's also a line segment. It is not a secant line. And then we look at NM with arrows above it. Do you see that? So the arrows are above it. So NM will continue on. We know that. So that would be the secant line because it touches the circle or your curve in two spots. So NM is your secant line of this diagram. All right. We want to also identify the secant line here. We can just look and we can say, well, KJ and IH are not because they have line segment signs. LI, we look here, touches in one spot, so it's not. KI continues on, touches it in two spots. So yes, that is a secant line. Next problem. It says which you have this quadrilateral inscribed in the circle. Now, when it says something like this, and I should have probably told you that before, but when it has this This means circle J, and they always call it by the center point. Okay, so that's how they say EFGH is inscribed in circle J, shown below. Which of the following would be considered a chord? Okay, so we're looking at chords here. Let me just slide this up just slightly so you can see all of those. Okay, so GI. Chord has to touch two sides. So that is not because I is not on the circle. So GI is not a chord. JF, it has to touch both sides of the circle. So JF is a radius. It is not a chord. HG, okay, so it touches the circle here and it touches the circle here. So yes, HG is a chord. And if you just go from I to H, it does not touch the circle here, so IH is also not a chord. So the only answer that it could be here is HG. Using the diagram below, identify the secant line. So we look through quickly. ON is a radius. No. OP is a chord. It is not a secant line because it doesn't continue. SQ is a secant line because it continues. QR is a tangent line. It is not a secant line, so that's not it. So SQ is the only option there. Okay, determine which statement is true for all these. And as we go through this, every circle is similar to itself. Not it's just itself, but to others. So this is correct, 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 and this is correct. Actually, for the problem, so since it says all of these circles are similar, then you'd click on this one, not all of these. There was in a quiz that I took earlier, it didn't have this last option, so you had to click every one. So it just depends on what your test says. But this one just says which statement is true, not that more than one could be correct. So if you don't have the option for all of the circles are similar, then click each one. If there's the option that all of the circles are similar, then just click that one. But all circles are similar to themselves. Okay, so for this problem, it says how many chords so are there in this image? So we're going to go through the chords, each one by one. So it has to touch the circle on two spots. So UT is a chord, so that's one. Touch the circle on two spots, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now this touches the circle, two spots, so that makes 7. This does 8. From here to here, it does 9. And this looks like a diameter, so that also does 10. And I'm looking at the third circle for any spots, and there are no other options. So there are 10 chords in that particular image. Okay, this is asking how many chords are in this image. So we'll do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this touches in two spots, 6. This is a radius, so those aren't possibilities. So it's 6 chords are in that image. Okay, for this particular problem, you've got this inscribed inside. How many chords? It's the same kind of problem, so we'll go through it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, going through 6. Those are radius, so there's 6 in that particular image. Okay, how many chords again? So you're just identifying chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. I always like to go, as you can see, on the outside first and then look on the inside. Touches the circle, so that's 5, and then 6, and this is not 1. So 6 again. Okay, how many radii? Radii have to start from the center point and go out and touch the edge of the circle. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 radii on this particular circle. How many radii are in this one? So let's do it again. Start from the center and go out. 1, and it touches the edge of the circle, so it is 2. Then this one goes 3, 4, 5, and now this cannot be because it doesn't go to the edge of the circle. It stops here. This is the same. So it stops here. So neither one of these are radii. So there are, I think I said 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5 that were there. Okay, next problem, last one. Of all these circles, and this is the one like what I was saying, given the following circles, which are similar, and mark all answers that are correct, more than one answer may be. And since all circles are similar to each other, oops, I've got to get the pen. You will mark every single one of these. You'll put a check on every single one because all circles are similar to themselves because the angles are always 360 in a circle. All right, so that's the end of this section. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. But you should be able to do this fairly easy, just as long as you know and understand the vocabulary with the circles.